I like to stand or walk around a little bit for two reasons. One, I have a problem with my knee, and if I stay in one position for too long, then I get pain. And secondly, I'm so short, if I'm sitting down, you will think I'm missing. Okay. So as we said, I mean, we will see whether it's really possible to avoid this type of disputes. And in my opinion, contract management is a potent and a potential tool for that. Before we go into the details of dispute and all that, a very quick introduction about our company, ALSTOM. It's a global multinational company. We are fundamentally divided into three sectors. The power sector, which is a majority of the portion, and then there is a transportation sector, and then there is a grid sector, which is a recent acquisition of Arriva in the transmission and distribution business. We are the number one metro tram supplier, 1 in 4, and we are proud to have this TGV, you must have heard of it, running between several cities and Paris. It has been tested for 541 kilometers an hour on the straight track between Strasbourg and Paris. And we are also suppliers of major power plant equipment, and we are leaders in turnkey projects. What we are going to talk about has more relevance to turnkey projects and dispute situations there. Sorry. We have about 96,000 people, a big company with lots of people, and you can see most of us are located in Europe and partly in America and Asia. And now this will change in the near future. As we said, we make all types of trains and trams for the public. The grid sector, this is a recent acquisition in 2003. As part of the deal with the European Union, we had to sell away the transmission sector, which ALSTOM had at that time, to Arriva. And after a few years, last year, we bought it back. So the grid is a recent acquisition by ALSTOM. In this grid sector, we have this substations and transformers and the big transmission lines and things like that. Pardon? Oh, for everything. We need transmission for everything, so we do it for everything. I mean, I am working in the gas business, but we can come down to that next one. 1/4 of the world's fleet relies on ALSTOM technology. Power generation, we are in power generation, and as you can see, we are driven by environment, we are driven by economic growth, we are driven by the age of the fleet in terms of service and other businesses. This is a very colorful slide. It talks about volumes by regions, and you can see it yourself when you have time in the weekend, that it's really the axis is shifting towards Asia. More than 60% of the market will be in Asia, as I said. To answer your question, we are in the business of gas. We're making gas turbines. We also do steam turbines, which run on coal and oil. We are also in this business of geothermal, biomass, and solar, the so-called renewables. This is a recent start for us, and we are a small player at the moment. Wind as well. We have our head office in Spain. We acquired a company called Ecotecnia, which is a Spanish wind company. We are also in the business of nuclear. We are providing the conventional steam turbines for the nuclear power units. And we also do this hydro. We have some big hydro projects. Well, we try to be leaders in everything we do. We are 96,000 people in the whole company, and we have about 52,000 of them in the power business, which is chaired by Philippe Joubert. You know, when I came in first, I said that there's a better way of resolving disputes. I was just thinking about the story with the scientist Galileo. He was the first one to believe that the earth is round and not flat. Everyone else believed it's flat, and it seems the king called him and he said, I'm going to take you to 4 pillars. And at every pillar I'm going to ask you, is the world earth round or flat? And if you say round, in all the 4th, you'll be killed. So he was checking the first, he said earth is round. Second, earth is round. Third, earth is round. Fourth, his friend came and told him, for heaven's sake, please say earth is flat, don't die. So he said, earth is flat. He got down and he told his friend, but the earth is round. So that's what I'd probably like to do with Alexander. Now, what is the relevance of the story? You know, this is a typical Indian behavior that before we start doing anything, we pray to a god, which is actually the elephant god. And we believe that he will remove all the obstacles down the line. So it will be great if he can remove all the obstacles in our EPC project executions. But there's also a very interesting Indian story, you know, which my...
So that's okay, I'll try this.
Which my father tells me all the time. And this is about 4 blind people. They go into the forest and they come across an elephant. But they are blind. So what do? They are trying to feel it. So something has come in the way and let's see what it is. So one of them is actually touching the front part and he says, I think it is a snake. And one of them is touching the legs and he says, no, I think it's a pillar. And the third one is touching the body and he says, no, it looks like a wall. And the fourth one is touching the tail and says, no, it's a rope. So that's all. The story ends there. What happened to these blind people? Did they have a jolly ride on the elephant and came out of the forest? Or did they get killed by the elephant? It's left to your imagination. The moral of the story is see the whole picture. And the fact is we are all blind. We have eyes but we are blind. We don't see what we don't like to see. And that's exactly the problem. And we are all blind in the sense also that we are strapped for resources. Nobody has unlimited resources. And that is why we have contracts, we have frameworks, we have disputes. Can we try to draw an analogy between the elephant and the contracts? I tried. Sorry. All contracts, sometimes they are domestic elephants, nice. Some of them are wild elephants. But all are elephants. They are nice if you do properly and if they are wild if you tamper them. Better do whatever it says. This is really the bottom line. If you are near an elephant, do what it says. Essential to see and know the whole picture. We already talked about it. I mean, it's very important. I know Alexander and some others in the room may not like this bullet, but it's a fact. Avoid taking it to the big cities. Don't go to Zurich, Vienna, London, Paris, as far as possible. But by the way, this is also valid for projects. You can substitute contracts with projects. And everything is already valid, turnkey project, all valid, except probably the last bullet. I mean, you can take projects to Paris or Zurich. In fact, we have recently done a power project in Paris. Why do these problems happen? Let's have a short look at this picture, which is very complex, very complicated, drawn by one of our engineers. How many agencies are involved in a turnkey power project? We talked about, Antonio talked about it in the morning session about different agencies. Now, there is the owner, who is having an equity stake, who is having a debt, and there is the EPC contractor, and there is the operation contractor, there is a power purchaser, there is the lenders who are the banks who give the money, and there are the project sponsors who are parent companies probably of these investors, and we have the insurance people. We have all these key players involved. They are all potentially from different countries, different cultures, they speak different languages, and most importantly, they have different commercial, legal, and financial interests. Each one has its own interest, conflicting interests. The only common factor in this setup is the project itself. They are all doing the project. That's it, nothing more. What is contract management? Awareness. See the full picture. Know your rights. Know your obligations. Know your scope of work. Read your contract. I keep telling our people, there are many guys who just don't read the contract. And they think problems will solve themselves. And then performance. Now, this is really the primary goal. Why do we have contracts? Why do we have projects? Because we want something to work at the end of the day. We want people to make money at the end of the day. And that's really the reason why we have this project. So performance is the primary goal, not disputes, not claims. And as long as we perform, all parties, I mean in the sense, right, for the time being I am trying to think not just in terms of EPC contractor, but also in terms of any party. As long as we perform the contract, we have no problems. We are happy. And then the last but not the least is the enforcement of your rights and remedies if something goes wrong. Contract management is certainly not about creating a battlefield. I mean, as I said, performance is the primary goal, not disputes or not battles. And it's not about squeezing parties to death. I mean, it's not having unfair terms to squeeze somebody to death. But these are all theory. In practice, something else may happen, and that's why we have people like Alexander. The main objectives of contract management, by the way, this contract management itself was, at least for ALSTOM, a fairly recent concept. We are still integrated with the legal department of ALSTOM, but the principle of contract management was started not long ago, 2002, to be precise, just 7-8 years ago. The real purpose, as I said again, performance. Now this we really have to remember all the time. I mean, problems come because we don't perform. Somebody does not perform his obligation. Maintain balanced relationship. We talked about, Antonio talked about relationships. Lynn talked about relationships. If you go into disputes, if you go into arbitration, this is what you impact. Claim avoidance. It's the best form. How to deal a claim? Avoid a claim. Try to avoid a claim at least. Prevent claims from turning into formal disputes. How this is possible, we all know, but we can have a look at it later down the line. And close out the contracts properly. I mean, you have a contract, you perform the contract and close it out at the end of the day. And that's really the purpose of the contract. So what do we do in ALSTOM is we stress on the awareness principle. So we make everybody in the team, the project team, read the contract, analyze their portion of the contract, and we have understanding of the performance obligations. Now these are the classical project management parameters: scope, price, cost, time, and quality. I mean, every problem is related to any one or other of the both of this. In EPC contracts, scope and price are fairly fixed, I would say. There is a potential to vary them, but not a lot. But it is these factors, cost, time, and quality, which are really flexible players, and they have conflicting interests, and it's very difficult and it is very important to manage them, manage the interrelationship between them. And EPC contract closing, I mean, what do we have to do? When we have a contract, we always say, okay, we have to perform the contract and we have to close the contract successfully. So what do we need to do for that? So we start from the end. And then we say, okay, which are the various obligations, which are the various scope obligations, price obligation, payments obligations, all the obligations are analyzed. And then we try to jot it down and we make the whole team familiar. Awareness is the key. Everyone has to be aware what he has to do. And then he has to do it. We have this concepts of provisional acceptance or commercial operation, and we have this concept of punch list and training. All these things we need to do. I mean, the job doesn't end by just supplying a machine or making it run. You have to do all the other things which you agreed to do. And then there is a warranty period which is over. All payments are settled and no claims are open. And that is when the contracts are finally and successfully closed. Claim management is a part of contract management. I mean, it is not something which is foreign to contract management. Many people in many jurisdictions, many cultures, they do not like the word claim. But it is part of life. It's part of contract management. Claim is a demand which can be for time, which could be for costs, and it could be for adjustment of your performance guarantee which you have guaranteed, and it could be for damages, liquidated damages, and it could be also for relief from any other obligations. Claim per se is not a formal dispute, but it is a basis for a formal dispute. It could be a basis for a formal dispute. We can have financial claims. Liquidated damages is a classical example of financial claim. We can have extension of time claims. Now this is a very, very complex aspect these days. I mean, we did discuss shortly about concurrent delays and float. And these are real irritants these days. It is best to govern them properly and the way you want it to be governed. Not rely on any law or jurisdiction, because there is really no law which is so sophisticated it can deal about concurrent delays or floats. Even though I believe in French law, in contracts where you have to perform tailor-made obligations, they do give the advantage of float to the contractor. But then, we should not depend on that. Define what you need to do. I have seen one contract where, interestingly, it was owner's obligations. Client has to give certain details, certain obligations, certain performance. And he says, the owner obligation delay, he is defining it as a delay in performing the obligations, provided contractor is willing and able to perform in the same period. So this is a very tricky definition. We need to be aware of that. Then you can perform, because many times the psychology is, oh, he's late, so it's okay, I can also be late. And that is not what we encourage. He said, you have agreed to do certain things and certain times, do it. Don't worry about the other guy. If he's late, we will have some remedies. Technical content claims. Now this can be in terms of a scope change or a guarantee, or it can also happen during the warranty period. It can also happen during the defects period. Technical claims. What is claim management all about? It's about claim prevention to start with. If you can prevent a claim, prevent it. How we can do it, we can see. Claim development. I mean, if you cannot prevent a claim, then you have to develop a claim. There are several different processes. You have to notify and things like that. And how can you handle a claim? How can you negotiate a claim and settle a claim? Now, this depends on case to case. There cannot be a tailor-made solution or a template solution. It depends on the culture, it depends on the client, it depends on the contract, it depends on the company, it depends on the project situation. Who is involved in a claim? I mean, we saw the slide which showing different agencies. Any of these agencies can be involved in any claim. It could be a claim from client to owner, owner to client, subcontractors, suppliers. All these people can make claims against each other. Third parties also can make claims. If we damage somebody else's property, he will make a claim. If we damage the government's property, the government will make a claim. In a recent case, our subcontractor was digging into a site and he dug into an internet cable of the government. And the government came back and he claimed us €1 million. He said, you have made me lose 5 days of internet provision to my suppliers, to my customers. It's a third party claim. It can also be a claim from the insurance company or a claim to the insurance company. Now, normally we have claims to the insurance companies, but in certain cases, like in case of subrogation, the insurance companies also can make a claim on contractor or supplier. We saw already, I mean, how this complexity can work. I mean, it can work whichever direction. This is exactly the complexity of claims. Typical situations leading to claims. We talked about claim avoidance. How can we avoid a claim? The best thing is to have a clear definition of the scope of work. Have a division of work which is clear, especially define the interfaces properly. I mean, in a power project, we have so many interfaces, so many systems. Define them clearly, properly. Don't worry about the volume of the contracts. Arbitrators are not worried about the volumes. So make them as clear, as specific as possible. Delay in issue or approval of documents. Now we have to issues certain documentation, customer has to approve it, or supplier issues some drawings, we have to approve it, we have delays and we get problems. Frequent design changes or quality of material changes. Now, we have had some very interesting and very disturbing examples of this in some of our projects in America. It was an innocent process. I mean, the project developed a process by which the contractor will ask us questions and we will reply them. He will say, I have this doubt, what do I have to do? We tell them, do this. Do it like this, like this. So at the end of the project, he collected 2,000 instructions like this and he said, gentlemen, you have been changing the scope 2,000 times during the project execution. And you have affected my productivity. So my claim is 100% of my contract value. And you know, in America, they can hire the best lawyers and you can prove anything. Poor or late performance by supplier, yeah, it can also be a reason for delay or a claim. Force majeure events. I mean, talking about force majeure, Antonio, I think, gave us some examples of adverse weather conditions. We had a funny situation. It was very hot in one of the Balkan states. It was continuously hot for 46, 47 degrees for 15 days and we said adverse weather. We made a claim. The customer rejected it. We said, why? Because force majeure is something which you cannot foresee. In summer it will be hot in this country, so you should have foreseen it. Then of course we didn't give up, so we went back to history and we said the longest time in the last 20 years when it was hot was only 7 days. So, but here, no, this year it was 10 days, so at least give us 3 days. Defects in the work. This can really be a headache. If you supply a defective product, you have to face the consequences. That could be huge claims. This can also occur during the warranty period when you have finished your project, the main part of the project, and you are working, you are waiting. As we said, I mean, this doesn't matter which legal law is applicable or which jurisdiction is applicable. It's all about facts. And it's facts what exist, and it's the facts what we record. And I think these people made it a point in the pre-lunch session about keeping records of what we have done. Because that is the only way, because these people, excuse me, they are really strangers to the project. If you go to them, they have to rely on documented information to see, really understand really what happened. But if I have to solve a claim with my client, I know exactly what happened, he knows exactly what happened, so it may be that much easier to talk about it. Scope changes, material changes, changes. Now scope changes is an area where we can really regulate it in the contract. We can avoid a lot of claims, lot of disputes if you really regulate and if you follow what the contract says. We have these days very good scope change clauses, scope change provisions. We can say that if before we do any change, we have to agree on the price, we have to agree on the time, we have to agree on performance guarantees, and then we do the job. But what we do in reality is, as and when things come, we take it and we do it. And at the end, in one of the projects, my engineers came to us and said, oh, we have done so many, they asked us to do this, but we have done even better for them. I said, why did you do it better for them? I said, engineering, technically it's better, but okay, technically it may be better, but was it required? And then you go to the client and say, I did something better for you, please pay me. You say, sorry, I didn't ask you to do it, you didn't agree with me. Local laws and regulations. Many times in reality we do get into projects in countries where we do not understand the local laws, the local regulations, especially technical. And we think if we see compliant product will work also without any problems in India. We do not realize that India has its own statutory controls, Indian boiler regulations and things like that, and we need to be aware of that. Permitting, we talked about it also in the morning. Permitting, this is a very, very sensitive issue. We try to define in the contracts what permits client has to obtain, what permits contractor has to obtain. But still we have a lot of problems, a lot of disputes in this area. Partially because the requirement of the lenders, I mean they like to push permitting responsibility as far as possible to contractors, even though the general rule should be the party who is best able to control and mitigate the particular scope or the risk should have it. But unfortunately, it does not work in power projects like that. Most of the risks are taken by the EPC contractor. And that is when we have problem, we have trouble. And there are cases, believe me, when one client situation we had, client was supposed to give us as per contract construction water point and also obtain the construction water permit. That's all it said. And he obtained the permit, he gave us a point, but there was no water coming from that point. From the borewell, there was no water. So we made a claim. We said, but he said, sorry, I have to give you a point, I have to give you the permit. So if there is no water in the ground, I can't help you. So what shall we do? I can tell you at the end what we did. Input delays, land, again similar issues, land. You have always land and access are problems in many of our cases in greenfield projects because this land belongs to somebody else, the government farmers are striking and things like that, and you don't know really a particular route or land can be used as a public right of way. In one of our projects, the client told us, okay, you cannot use this route, so you transfer your people from here over the compound wall with a crane. Because of access. Access was blocked.
Did you agree on that?
You can bet we didn't. Yeah, I mean, if you talk about power project sites, we are talking about 2,000, 3,000 people average. It's impractical to transfer them with a crane over the compound wall. Input delays, we already discussed about it. Grid access was a point also mentioned in the morning. Grid access is a very important point because when we do commissioning of our machines, we need uninterrupted access to the grid. And many times in many countries, the grid says, I'm the boss, you have to listen to me. You cannot start your machine now, or you cannot load beyond a certain point. Now, all this has time implications for us, cost implications for us. So we have to deal with them in the contract, that we need to give them grid access, and it is a responsibility of the client to give us this grid access. Changes in business models. SunPower already mentioned about the liquidated damages which are applicable. It was new to me for such cases. But believe me, there have been cases where, especially with ALSTOM, where the clients have found it more economical or more beneficial to not to have the project but to have the liquidated damages for delay paid by ALSTOM. Because of the change in business scenario, because when they initially developed the project, they thought so much would be the demand and so much would be the price, and 2 years down the line they realized the price is half, the demand is half, because some bubble somewhere has burst. Governmental actions can also lead to some claims. If government changes the law or changes a permit, can ask for it. And you can think of many other cases, many other situations. As we said, I mean, the main objective is to perform and avoid a claim. How can a claim be avoided? By clear contract wording. We already saw some examples in the morning. Appropriate terms and conditions, concurrent delay and float, and is a good example. I mean, you define clearly who owns the float in the project. If you do not regulate it, the client will say it belongs to me, the contractor will say it belongs to me, and even the supplier could say it belongs to me. Contract is analyzed and understood by the whole team, and this is really the bottom line, and this is where we are spending most of our time. We have some systems, we have some databases where we have to show that we have read the contract. It's so fundamental. We just don't read the contract. And amendments to the contract. And when you have a scope change or when you have a change in the situation, try to ask for an amendment. Do not rely on verbal agreements or do not rely on assumptions. I mean, our guys told us, yeah, we thought the customer is happy and finally he will pay us for all the extra work we did. But that's not the way it works. Because clients' financial interests are not same like ours. Corrective actions in case of breach. Now if you have a delay, try to control your delay. If somebody else has a delay, do not look at him and try to adjust your workspace. You do what you are contracted to do. This is what we stress. Now some good examples, some real life practical examples of bank guarantee. We say yes, this is actually not an EPC contract, but this is a contract between company and its supplier. So what does it mean? Bank guarantee, yes, doesn't mean anything. 1% per week up to 10% liquidated damage. What is 1%? 1% of what? And 10% of what? It's missing. Terms of payment. Now this is very classical. 60 days, 3 months after PSC. I do not know what to make out of this. I mean, my accountant always tells me, oh, it's so clear. We know exactly what it means. But unfortunately, we don't know what it means.
Provisional acceptance certificate.
No, we know what is PSC, but what is 60 days, 3 months after? What is 60 days, 3 months after PSC? My accountant tells me, oh, come on, you are a fool, it's so clear. What is so clear? He said 60 days is the credit time. 3 months after PSC, he is due for the payment, I will take 60 days to make the payment. I said, hell, why don't you say it like this? Why don't you write it like this? How can I evaluate a claim, whether it comes from us or comes from our partner? We have to have some consistent ways of understanding and evaluating this claim. Is there an impact on the critical path? The critical path is one by definition has no float. So you can find out whether it is really impacting the critical path, because if a delay does not impact the critical path, the chances that you will get an extension of time are very minimal. Is there concurrent delay? What is concurrent delay? First of all, we have to define, and then we have to see whether is there really a concurrent delay or not. Or the types of costs and amounts justified. I mean, we cannot claim everything because of an event which has created a delay. It has to be relevant, cause and effect. Is this event has caused this cost? If you can establish it, yes. Otherwise, no. And is the claimed party contractually liable to pay? I mean, you should claim somebody else. Are you coming and trying to claim me? My supplier always tells us, oh, why are you claiming me? Go to your client and claim him. He created the problem. And can the claim be transferred to third parties? Now, typically, I mean, any other party, I mean, it can happen. In reality, it's possible. It's practically possible. I mean, we have a damage and we are trying to fight. Oh, who is responsible? Your design, your construction. We say, no, your operation. But then we both forgot that, look, there is an insurance available for this damage. So go try to get the money from the insurer. And let's see how we can do it. This is part of the emotional cultures. Somebody makes a mistake, immediate thing is to say, I didn't make the mistake. I'm not responsible. You are not responsible. What can be the claim defenses? Notification. We talked about English law and other jurisdictions. Now we have, in these days, in power project contracts, we have very specific requirements of notification. It says if you know an event, you have to notify within 1 week in order to be eligible for any time and cost claim. It is a condition precedent. This is what our project managers and project people do not read and do not like to follow. And then at the end of the day, you have no chance. Because this can be the first tier of defense. You have not notified me. It's a condition precedent. You are not fulfilled. Sorry. And then we try to go and give arguments like, okay, I notified you 20 days later. Don't give me this 20 days. Give me the after the 20. All those are secondary arguments. Customer says or supplier says, you didn't notify me. Sorry. It was a condition precedent. I cannot pay you anything. I cannot give you any extension of time. There's no impact on the critical path. Now this is very cleverly done. I mean, these days there are so many of these time scheduling specialists, electronic specialists. Any given point of time they can prove that the delay was not on the critical path. You have to only engage the correct time scheduling company. They can always show you it is not the delay on the critical path. Concurrent delay, we already talked about, delay was caused by force majeure. Problem is, if it's a force majeure, in many cases, we can only get time, but not the cause. One of our recent Baltic state projects, our civil company was digging foundation hole, and suddenly the digging machine went down into the ground. It was missing over a matter of seconds, and we said, what's happening? And then we found it was actually a World War II tunnel which was lying underground, which nobody knew. So the typical subsoil risk